All right, so this is the Faculty Advisory Committee to the Board of Regents meeting of September 10th, 2021. So we'll begin, let's begin with approval of the agenda, and each of you should have it. Let me see if I can share it. Please don't judge my desktop if you happen to see it. It is unbearably messy. Okay. Motion to approve the agenda? Can I hear? Is that a motion?
Yep. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. And a second. Do we need a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. I have a proposal for a modification to the agenda. A proposal for a modification and a note. So we have with us today two guests. One is my CEO, Terry Brown, and with him JD Matthewson, and they will be working on strategic planning for the Consolidated College and want to share some stuff with us. So I propose that we move that right after the minutes so that they don't have to wait around for our extensive discussions that, as we see, begin far beyond before the meeting even begins, right? So I'd like to propose that change. Perhaps I should have proposed that before I made the motion. Never done this. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Okay. How does that sound to you all?
Agreed.
All right. Any other notes, modifications? Okay. So shall we vote on approving the agenda with the modification that I just proposed? All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and I should mention this because I might forget. So according to the new virtual meeting regulations, we do have to do a roll call vote for any vote that's not unanimous. So we can do a voice vote, but then if it's not unanimous, we're going to have to go through and do the roll call. I'm afraid I forget. Pam is here, so I don't think she'll let me forget. But just in case, please check on me with that. All right, let's move on to approval of the minutes, also linked in your agenda. Everyone have a copy? Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, modifications, corrections? Right. Shall we accept the minutes as is? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, so let's move to our new item now. Dr. Brown, and have I lost you, Jade? There we go. Take it away.
Selena, whatever your desktop looks like, as soon as you said that, I closed out everything on mine just to make sure. So thank you for that reminder. It does not look like I can share my screen. I just emailed the presentation to you and to Pamela. So
Kalina, if you make Dr. Brown presenter, if you right-click on his name and change his role to presenter, he'll be able to share. You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Thanks for that. That was much quicker than the process I knew, but done. You should be all set.
Here
Okay.
now, Dr. Brown?
It's not, my thing hasn't changed. Let's see if I can change.
You are a presenter now, but I can share also if it becomes too difficult.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just because I know this may
Sure.
take me a while. Yeah, my share button is grayed out, so.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that.
Okay, that is it. First of all, thank you, Kalina, for agreeing to I guess move technically to have us put on the agenda, and to the Faculty Advisory Council for agreeing to allow us to present to you this afternoon. I am Dr. Terry Brown. I'm the relatively new CEO for Gateway Community College. You said that I was your CEO. I was going to say you were my faculty member, but we can work that out later. And I'm actually quite pleased to see several familiar faces. I think there's one person that I know from each of the colleges that I've served at. So it's good to see all of you. And with me is JD Matthewson. I'll go ahead and allow him to introduce himself to you all.
Hi there. I'm JD Matthewson, interim AVP of Institutional Effectiveness for CT State, as well as senior research associate over at the system office. And before I was there, I worked in David Stoloff's office doing a bit of tech support and assessment management. So it's good to see some faces that I haven't seen in a while.
So the reason why we asked to come to you is that there have been a number of developments with the transition and development of the Connecticut State Community College, one of which is strategic planning. Some of you may know that leading that effort until her departure to Anne Arundel Community College in Maryland, Tanya Milner had been chairing this effort. And when she left, President Levinson, Interim President Levinson and Interim Provost Rook asked us, approved us to pick up the charge, pick up the work, and to continue to move it forward. So one of the things that, as JD and I were getting ourselves oriented or reoriented to all of this work, is that the faculty that we had on the council were no longer with us. One got another position, another faculty member is doing some other things, and so she left the council. So we are left, as we're looking up and down our participants, with at present no faculty members, and that is just not, from where I sit, is not workable. It does not make sense as we are formulating a strategic plan for the college to not have faculty present on the committee. There are a variety of levels of engagement and participation and all of that. But if we do not have faculty on this council, then we will be missing something. So spoke with JD and then with Kalina, and here we are. So again, thank you for giving us a few moments of your meeting to let you know where we are and where we're going with this. And at the end, we'll be asking for additional engagement on the part of the faculty. So if you can go on to the next one, Kalina. Most of this is written out someplace, so I'm not going to, spend a lot of time reading a whole lot. But basically, what's undergirding, or part of what's undergirding our work, is Nietzsche Standard 2, Planning and Evaluation. And you'll notice that strategic planning is one of the key components of that particular standard. More generally, and maybe even more importantly, I'm sort of an adherent to that saying: if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And so planning, strategic planning for this college is of critical importance as we are moving forward. So our charge, and that's on the next slide, is to create the initial document that embodies the mission, vision, principles, values, priorities of the Connecticut State Community College. Those have been articulated and published. I believe some of this happened while I was in Tennessee. I got back last year. But I have it here for reference, and we're happy to Lena and Pamela already have it, so it is perfectly fine if this becomes part of the official record. But those are there. The next slide. So the mission and vision are articulated, and then based on a number of discussions, there were guiding principles for the new college that we came up with. Being student-centered, prioritizing teaching, learning, and the academic program, the importance of the support services for students, access and affordability are core to who we are as community colleges. And then also being conscientious and good stewards of the resources that we are responsible for. I also want to highlight, and I don't mind saying sort of from my seat as a CEO, that the campuses, their connections with the business and industry and communities are also core to the work of the larger statewide college, and something that should be enshrined and reflected in our strategic plan. So the next one, these are the principles. There are 11 priorities that emerged out of some of the initial discussions. I'll just give a minute or two for you to look through what those look like. But again, this is sort of in movement to operationalize some of these principles and what the college ought to be or ought to be about. So I'll just give it a minute or two.
It's very hard to read.
Could
Could somebody read them aloud, maybe?
Okay.
That helps. Thanks.
Okay. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, great. Does anyone need any more time? Okay.
Say the yellow ones are a little hard to read.
Well, let me hit those. So number 3, the top box, the college will provide access for students across the state to affordable, consistent, high quality academic programs offered by the college with hands-on classroom and online offerings at times of day and days of the week that meet their schedules. And then number 8, which is the yellow box on the second row, the college will provide a full array of transfer opportunities for students who want to earn a bachelor's degree.
Other than number 10,
Other than 10.
does the word faculty appear anywhere in these 11? strategic
Uh,
objectives?
I can look. I see students, I see academic and
11.
administrative functions. I see general education core.
11 has faculty positions.
And faculty positions to meet student need. Yep. Oh, and a number, oh, you said other than number 10. So yeah, that one is there.
Mhm.
Okay.
This is Mike Shea. I was wondering, number 11,
Yes.
I get a little concerned about anything that allows the state to sort of put less money into public higher ed. I kind of wish it weren't phrased that way, that we got to save money in order to, I mean, I agree, waiting, but I don't think.
So without, if I could put it this way, at this point, we are definitely in the collecting feedback phase. And I was going to get to this a little bit later, but I think we won't be able to say this too often, that our intention is for whatever comes out of this process to be broadly, widely shared and disseminated, and we will take the feedback, consider it, and respond to it. I can't promise that it will, look like, everybody, what everybody would want it to look like. But we are conscious and, have heard in a variety of different quarters that sometimes part of the communication problem is that people provide feedback, and even when it's considered, particularly if it ends up being in the negative or it doesn't look like it was being used, that it's not always evident that it was even looked at. So JD and I have had these conversations that however it is that we get feedback, we also want to communicate when and how and then if, so to speak, if that feedback was utilized. That's important to do. Even if you don't adhere or incorporate what people said, it's important for people to know that they were heard and listened to, and what they put forward was considered. So thank you for that. That's something that
Yeah, and
I
thank you
can
for
definitely
coming.
bring back to the council.
Thanks, and I appreciate your presenting this to us too and being here. So thanks for coming.
No,
doing
absolutely, absolutely. So
Dr. Brown, may I ask a question? I have my hand
by all
raised, but I
means.
don't think you can see when you're sharing.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Jennifer Long from Three Rivers Community College, and I had sustained an injury recently, and I was in meetings all day. So I'm sorry I didn't have more context for your presentation for today, but I just wanted to ask a point of clarification, because it
Sure.
seems to me like what's happening is that you're presenting the strategic plan and suggesting that faculty have more involvement in the plan. And a few months ago, I spoke at a forum where I spoke with some state senators at a hearing to talk about the impacts of getting rid of developmental education at the community college system. And one of the pieces of information the senators gave back to the Board of Regents representatives was that faculty are incredibly frustrated by the lack of voice and a lack of input actually being into these programs and ideas.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they responded to, all of them across the board during that meeting, they said, that is an issue and we're going to address it. Since then, I haven't heard of, with all due respect, one single discussion where faculty input and concerns about our thousands of complaints about trying to give feedback and having it not be taken into consideration. Like, I haven't seen an outreach for that discussion. So I so appreciate you coming, and I can see that you're coming from this from a great position and you really want to see that feedback. But I just want to convey to you that I don't think that the lack of participation has been that there hasn't been interest for faculty. I think it's much more complex than that. And I just wonder if you could ask your colleagues to consider maybe if maybe the FAC could serve, if this is something Kalina and David wanted to do, like maybe generating some type of list of what those concerns are that have been hindering the participation, because of this, because I hear what you're saying, right?
Mhm.
About, you know, we want to have the appearance that our feedback was considered, even though it might not make it in that draft. But when you're on committee after committee, year after year, and none of your feedback is really considered or reflected in any of the drafts, and things are moved ahead in the name of efficiency, then it can be really hurt morale, as you can imagine. So I think I know what your intention is for today, and I so appreciate it. I didn't want you to leave today with the impression that if you don't get, you know, a much of a change after this appearance, that it's because people don't care. I think
Yeah.
it's that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me address that, if I might, at a couple of different levels. And I'm just going to self-disclose personally, I think in front of the whole world, because this is a public meeting. At every college that I have been at, I've got this streak going. There has been a change in the president within 1 year of my arrival. I feel like I'm like this magnet for organizational change or something like that. But with all of that transition, and it is enormously disruptive, whatever communication problems we already had get aggravated, and all of that kind of stuff. But I am, quite frankly, a believer, and JD and I, we've had these conversations, that if we don't do what we say we're going to do, then we're part of the problem. And he and I have no intentions of being part of that problem of communication. I happen to be a clinical psychologist by training, so I know a little something about vicious cycles and self-fulfilling prophecies. And I'm just not buying into that. So when we come and we ask for faculty participation, we mean what we say. And when we say that it will be considered, and even if it's yes, no, or we hadn't thought of that, and we say that we're going to communicate back, then that's what we will do. If anyone has a question, you are welcome to ask. We can't anticipate everything that everyone might want to know. So if there's something that folks do want to know, sometimes the whys or the why nots are just a difference in perspective, or whatever the emergency or situation happens to be at the time. So I think that there are, if I could just sort of do a half full kind of thing, that there are plenty of opportunities that we will have to build communication, and build the kind of relationships that, quite frankly, at the end of the day, our students are going to need. I don't mind telling you that as we had this discussion about coming to FAC, President Levinson and President Rook were in full support of us coming to you, bringing this to you, and they've given us a great deal of support and latitude in how to move the process forward. So for what it's worth, I know there's a whole history. I don't think anyone is blind or ignorant or whatever. But for what it's worth, I am encouraged by the support that we've gotten, not just from CSCU leadership, but actually now with FAC and so on. I'm seeing this as an opportunity to build on something.
So I see hands from Robin, JD, and Ron. I was not paying attention to order. So let's just go in that order. Robin?
Yeah, I'm Robin Gustafson from Western Connecticut State University. I have worked in education, in higher ed, in elementary schools, in corporations.
I'm sorry,
and-
there's a siren right outside my window. I'm going to hit mute for a little bit.
I've just never seen a strategic plan set of 11 goals that had less to do with higher education than the one that I saw on the last slide that you shared. When I worked in corporate training, it looked a little bit like that, right? The president said, oh, we need you know, some Band-Aid to fix some part of our corporation. So that's why we do training, and that's what it looks like. But higher education is very different. Higher education is really the faculty. It's really the faculty, and nothing in the 11 little shapes that I saw on the previous slide had to do with faculty or well, higher education. It's not just about delivering students or delivering information. It's about creating knowledge. It's about creating a community that is based on thinking and changing and learning. And I didn't see any of that on the previous slide. So that's just my concern. To me, it does not look like higher education.
So let me respond to that in a couple of different ways. One, and I'm sorry, going back to something that you asked about earlier, Jennifer. I want to emphasize that what you are seeing is not the strategic plan. Okay. First and foremost, this is what we're presenting to you really is sort of a summary of the discussions and the work of this council and the things that were identified as being things that we needed to make sure that we paid attention to. From my point of view, it is not exhaustive. There are lots of things that could be in there. There are some things that will probably not make the quote unquote final cut. And other things that are not there now that should be. And that's exactly why we are coming to you, and we'll be going to others to get that additional feedback. So that's number one. Number two, when we talk about, and we're bleeding a little bit into style versus substance, but I'll just hit it anyway. We have sort of these 11 priorities and the principles and all of that. And one of the things that JD and I are also working through is the format. What are we going to actually call some of these things? I finally feel, after the years that I've been in higher education, that I understand the difference between goals and objectives. I finally feel like I'm there now. But that shared language and what these are and what they mean and how they translate to actual operation is something that what we're presenting today does not reflect. At this point in time, this is, I would say, very much the ideas phase. As far as your point about higher education, again, I am listening and I am hearing, and whatever feedback, recommendations, additions, whatever it is that you have and want to share with us, please do so. We need to hear this.
I guess what I mean is, where I come from, the faculty are the college. They are the university. That's what makes a university a university. That's what makes a college a college. And so far, all I've heard from you is that we're kind of an add-on, a little Band-Aid, a little, oh, we need to tell them something. We need to, get some feedback from them. Like we're an addendum rather than the core.
Then and again, this is, I will own this as my own personal view, and I'm sure that there are a variety of them. The college, the community college, is a community, and the faculty are a core part of that community, and there are others. And so if students were not in there, then I would want for someone to say that. If a community is not in there, I would want for someone to say that. So I do hear your point that there may not be enough or adequate attention across these priorities to the role of faculty. It absolutely is central. And if that's something that we need to take another look at, then let's do that. But what I do want to say and to make sure that we all are paying attention to is that we are all in this enterprise, and I do believe it is an enterprise We are all in this together and ultimately for the benefit of our students and our communities. And if that gets reflected, then I think that we're on our way. But I hear you. I hear you about faculty. And the other thing that's not here that we ultimately will need to get to after we get through goals and principles and priorities and all of that, then there's operationalizing the work. What are we actually going to do to realize some of these larger principles? And that's where I think more of the particulars for whatever constituency, but more of the particulars would and should show up. So again, I would say that if you have some specific ideas or recommendations about how these should look, we welcome them. We want to have them.
Yeah, it should be decentralized. We had 12 communities, 12 campuses, 12 community campuses that were responsive to their local communities. It's like taking grassroots organizing and putting it all into a corporate headquarters. It doesn't make any sense. You've lost the power that you had. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
No, I listen, I get that. And the direction that we are moving in is towards the single college. Within that, and again, I am speaking for myself, within that, we have to find the way to continue to meet the local needs, and not just the local needs of the community, but we've got students that are sitting in classrooms. How do we, the question is, how do we in a centralized system meet those needs? Just like in previous years or days, how would we as 12 colleges deal with some central or common issues? It's going in a different direction, so we've got a new set of challenges. What the strategic plan should do is guide us in how we're going to meet these new challenges. So I hear you, and I know that there is not agreement. There's sometimes virulent disagreement about the direction that we're moving, and that's okay. If we all agreed on it, then then there would be something wrong with that. But if I could put it this way, and I mean this with all sincerity, you don't have to agree in order to contribute. And so whether you agree, whether you disagree, or you're somewhere in between, whatever feedback you have, whatever suggestions you have, whatever recommendations you have, we want to hear it.
So we have JD and then Ron, and then we should move on since this was a late insertion to the agenda. But there's always a chance to return to this as less of an informational item as an action item if that seems necessary to the group. Okay, JD, you're muted.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I withdraw my question. Terry covered it.
Great. Go ahead, Ron.
Hi, Terry. Good to see you again.
And you.
We go way back. So I know that you are sincere.
Not as far back as Lois and me.
Oh yeah. So I know you are sincere when you say that you will listen to faculty. However, okay, we're left wondering repeatedly if anyone listens to CEOs. We have evidence over and over again of policies being driven from the system office to the CEOs and being sort of rubber stamped and imposed upon us, such as the non-participation policy, the pass-fail policy. I mean, the list, I could go on with this list. And so I'm worried, Terry, that you're a glutton for punishment. And it seems to me that you're in a position where no one will listen to you. So therefore, you listening to us doesn't really mean all that much. And again, that's based upon the evidence that we've seen of how much authority the CEOs have been stripped of by the system office. And we're very, very concerned about that because, that at my institution, we had an extremely strong and independent president. And I have state representatives who are very upset that she's left. I have a whole bunch of foundation people, the donors, who are upset that she's left. and what they see is a leadership vacuum. And no fault of our current CEO, no fault of Lisa's, but the fault that their power and their authority have been stripped from them by the system office. And so therefore, I wish you luck, but I don't think the faculty want to get involved in again. It's like Lucy with the football and Charlie Brown. And we tried over and over again to have our voices taken. The football kept being taken away from us, and we fall flat on our faces. And I don't think we're interested in doing that again. But again, good luck to you. And it's very good to see you again.
And you as well. My only response to that is that for me, there is a long view of this. July 1st, 2023 will come, and then there will be July 2nd, and then there will be August of 23. There will be December of 23. I have a son, and I'm running a risk predicting the teenage mind. But at least at this point in time, he is intending to enroll at Gateway after he finishes his senior year this year. I have an unbelievably personal stake in the success of the college, in the success of the faculty and the staff in serving our students and ultimately in our students. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm not going anywhere. So for what it's worth. JD, I think his kids are a little younger, so we will have opportunity to get this right by the time they get here. But this is systemic change. This is not going to be instant. There is a whole bunch of stuff when you do change like this that we are going to have to work with and struggle with and disagree on and figure out and all of those things. That is the work, and so I have to believe, just because I've seen it at all 4 institutions that I've served at, as well as the one I served in Tennessee, I have to believe that there is a critical mass of people who are up to the work. Hopefully the silver tsunami will not disrupt that too much, but I think there are enough people who care about what happens for our students and with our students that we will deal with this as well.
I just want to real quick, I know you have to go, but I just want to say that we all really care.
I know.
And we care so much that there are no words. I just leave it with that.
Yeah.
We really care.
That we can agree on, and that is the place where we would like to begin. Just to make sure that you all see this, and whoever is out there in the world, the last couple of slides, what's coming up is that we are, as I mentioned before, JD and I are sort of taking stock of where we are and trying to organize things. We're reconvening the council. We're going to need to do some work in turning the work that we've got, what we've presented to you now, into something that would look, so to speak, like a strategic plan, something that can then become the springboard for some other work that needs to happen. By the end of the semester, we would like to have basically an operational draft that we can begin sharing with the council, have them validate it. Ultimately with the college community. So we're talking everyone from leadership to the custodians in our building and community members and so on. There's nothing here to hide. We all need to know and participate in the direction that we're going in. So that's maybe more the long than the short of it. But we are committed to this process, and anytime you would like to have us back for an update, please invite us. Anytime we feel strongly that we need to bring an update, then we might invite ourselves, or ask Kalina to invite us again. So however that works. But thank you all very, very much for your time. You all have already contributed to the process, so thank you to the FAC for some of your observations. I do want to also ask you all specifically if anyone from FAC would consider joining this council. You all are elected, and I guess in a way I'm more directing this to the community college members. But you all are elected / selected, representing your institutions. From my point of view, you all are in a logical and natural place to contribute to this work. And however, whoever wants to join us, but we will be looking for and soliciting faculty participation and engagement with this because it's that important.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, JD. And I'm sure folks can get in touch with you individually, and we can have conversations if there's some other way that would make sense to participate.
Absolutely. We welcome that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right. So reports of the chair and vice chair is next on the agenda. Where's David, do you want to go first?
Well, okay, briefly. The main thing that interests me at this point is the vaccine mandate. And, there is a resolution that I've circulated to everybody. I've added one whereas clause that I'll mention in just a minute. I don't know if this is the appropriate moment, Kalina, to put forward the motion, but I'd like to do so because I might have to leave the meeting in a little while. We have a situation at the house that I have to look after. But I think it's important, and you have, Kalina, can you make me the presenter here just briefly? Maybe I can already do that.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to try it the way that you got it. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay. So I think the main thing is, we did the working group on vaccine mandate following, discussion that I initiated at the Board of Regents meeting in April of the previous term. And in June, in fact, the board adopted a modified resolution. I think what we need to address now are a number of problems that have arisen in the perspective of solving those problems. The first of which, of course, is the non-medical exemptions. Our original resolution didn't have that, based on the fact that, for example, the state of Connecticut no longer accepts non-medical exemptions for the grade school MMR vaccines. Nonetheless, two reasons were brought to our attention and were insisted upon by the systems office. And I think probably the source of this was the Attorney General's office. One was that none of the vaccines had final approval, that is to say, biologics license approval, so-called BLA. And secondly, I think circulating around, again, my information on this is second and even third hand, was concern about the lawsuits that had been brought both in Massachusetts and in Connecticut by a group, a Massachusetts-based group, Family Foundations Endeavor Incorporated, which were still before the courts. And as a result, the non-medical exemption category was added, but at that time we'd been very clear that we wanted to have it tailored as narrow as possible to exclude personal reasons like it's going to turn me into a zombie, or political reasons such as, Sleepy Joe wants to take us over, or something like that, along with religious reasons which are not based on the religion itself, but that person's interpretation of the religion, where the leadership in that religion had in fact endorsed vaccination, and where the religion itself did not preclude medical interventions. As you know, what came out in terms of the application of the vaccine mandate was that, so far as I know, all requests, no matter what the reason, for non-medical exemptions were granted. The email which I've seen that was sent out nonetheless specified that that would be limited to the fall 2021 term, and in fact could be withdrawn by the Board of Regents. And that's what the resolution here basically puts forward. There's lots of whereas clauses, right? As a good resolution should have. The main thing is to recapitulate this non-medical exemption issue. But there's a second issue, which is when we hear that 80% or 90% of students, or for that matter, faculty, have been vaccinated, we're talking about those who reported. We're not taking into account the proportion of students or faculty or staff who have not reported their status. And so that's something that we need to know as well, so that we can better understand where we are. So let me just move the motion, if I may, at this point. Be it resolved that the board provides statistics of the total numbers and response rate to the vaccine mandate for students, faculty, and staff in each of the college and university sectors. We may not need to know it for each individual campus, but that would be an extra perk. That the BOR provides statistics on the total numbers and percentage of respondents granted non-medical and medical exemptions in each of the college and university sectors. That the BOR assure that all CSU institutions have appropriate software to monitor vaccination and testing compliance. This seems to be a problem perhaps at some of the community colleges and perhaps at some of the universities. I know that my university does have Medicat, but it's not clear to me that everyone does, where individuals can scan and upload their proof of vaccination. That the BOR consider adding booster shots to the vaccination mandate once that is recommended by the CDC. We're talking, and I already know, for example, I just spoke with my brother, who's up in Montreal, actually. He has some issues of compromised immune system, and he is scheduled for his third vaccination of Pfizer today. And that's coming in this country as well. Fourthly, that the BOR disallow non-medical exemptions immediately upon the approval of both mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna. I think we can expect with almost certainty that the Moderna vaccine, which applied approximately a month after the Pfizer, will be approved by the end of this month. And finally, that the board rescind all current non-medical exemptions at the same time as it rescinds all non-medical exemptions for example, the spring 2022 term for all students, faculty, and staff. So that's the resolution.
Okay. And David, can I ask that because I don't believe you've quite moved yet. Let's keep this under consideration. This is the next item on the agenda. Let me
I just want to bring it up
sure.
Immediately. As for my report, more generally, I was struck watching a video of a demonstration of teachers in Chicago some months ago. And one of the placards said, "You can't put students first if you put faculty last." And I think that's an important issue. And I think it came up in the discussion, which I thought was diplomatic and respectful, that we just had on the issue of strategic planning. And that's why I asked, where does the word faculty appear in the various little boxes? But I think others spoke far more eloquently than me. All I can say is I think our slogan should be to review and revise students first, and in fact, to retire it. There has to be a whole period of repairing and rebuilding the relationship between the FAC and the BOR on the one hand, and between faculty and administration, particularly at the community colleges, at the same time. And we need to respect the autonomy and integrity of the constituent institutions of CSU. We need to respect the specific mandates and distinct missions of the colleges and the universities. And we have to continue to promote faculty control of curriculum and pedagogy. Without those three issues, I think, and one might add also shared services on the basis of bilateral and multilateral agreement. Without that, I don't think anything else can be done properly. And what we have seen, at least from my perspective, and certainly as a member of the Finance and Infrastructure Committee, the development of a tremendous bureaucracy. Not only is it faculty last, but it is really Students First has turned into a project for building a bureaucracy, a second bureaucracy. In fact, it will take place in the former ITBD building in New Britain, a second bureaucracy. And it's not clear that it's going to benefit the students, and it is being done, as it were, to the detriment, to a considerable extent, of the faculty. And that doesn't seem to me that's community building. But I've said this before, except that here I am, I'm a outside observer in a certain sense as to what's going on at the community colleges. Right? I'm at one of the universities. I've been here now for 32, going into my 33rd year, hence the white hair. But I certainly sympathize and empathize with the community college faculty who see their institutions being delocalized and their role disenfranchised. And that's something that we have to really insist upon. Now, there's a new, I don't want to call him a sheriff or a coach, but there is a new CSCU president. And I think it's important that we be open to meeting with and consulting with and sharing our ideas with Terence Chang. I was on the advisory committee of faculty for the selection process, and quite frankly, as I said in an email, Terence Chang was my first choice based on the candidates that we interviewed. All that said, now we have to turn his demonstrated interest in having conversations with us to modifications, to reviewing and revising Students First, and to modifying the course in order to bring back faculty into the process of the actual governance of the community colleges, and for that matter, the universities in the state. So that's my hope. And that would conclude my report.
Thanks. I have very little to say today. We've only had, I believe, one meeting. The HR administration meeting was canceled. So we had ASA this morning. One thing to keep in mind is the new low completer procedure for academic programs. That's on page 111 of today's agenda. So I'll just throw that out there. I think David and I had hoped to have some sort of report or address for the full Board of Regents for the end of this month, but beginning of semester stuff was just too much, I think. So we'll put that off. And of course, that's only necessary because we never got that joint meeting of FAC and BOR, which, you know, there are conversations about that. Chairs of the Higher Ed Committee are aware and not pleased. So we will see what comes of that. There's also, I believe, going to be another, we're due for another informational hearing on the consolidation soon with the Higher Ed Committee. That will be coming up. I have to say that I'm a little, so today's ASA meeting, for example, academic and student affairs contained no mention of the safety standards that our students have walked back into at the beginning of this semester, and I found that surprising. I don't know if that's correct, but it felt odd to me. And, you know, I have to say I'm feeling a little, as I'm beginning to realize that we're coming into the last quarter of the year, we never really caught up. You know, David and I have been doing this for 2 years, and COVID hit immediately. And I've been feeling like we have been chasing something for 2 years. And you know, coming into this meeting, I felt a little bit like, goodness gracious, I would like to do something productive. But I also have no desire, because we've done this enough times, to involve myself in the pretense of doing something productive that amounts to nothing. And I think many of us are in the same place, and that's why our response to, you know, strategic planning or whatever else is what it is. So I kind of just want to express that, and I'm going to reflect on that this month, and would love to hear from some of you if you have thoughts about what it is that we might, even if it's a small thing, sort of say that we want to wrap up this 2-year term of ours with this year. I think we're going to do some fun stuff, but I've gotten some ideas from Barbara in terms of just new procedures that we could have for the group itself. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of express that because while it's cathartic to express the things that are going on in here, it's very frustrating, right? And I think sometimes we forget or not we, but the idea that many of us have gotten familiar with in terms of understanding what a structural problem is, it gets ignored when we start talking about actions we could take within that structure that are necessarily futile if you understand what a structural problem is, right? And here we are firmly within that structure. So, all right, that's really all I have to say, other than I think you all have seen the signatures of the endorsements of the resolution that we passed on college repopulation last month. I think we're at about, we have about 925 signatures on there. And, you know, Terrence Chang did call me first thing on August 25th in response to the fact that he was aware that this was happening and there was attention paid to it. But that's about it. So there's, you know, those conversations, as David points out, they are a lot more than we had before. So that's it for me. So now we can move on to your resolution, David.
Okay,
Yay.
and here I go, sharing it again. So I'm not going to repeat what I just said. Let's have a discussion, and I move the motion. Let me add just one thing. I listened carefully to President Cheng's address to the community, and I did retain the sentence, "In the coming weeks, we will look at ways to eliminate or drastically reduce non-medical exemptions. And we will continue to make shots widely available on every campus." So I think this resolution will have more support than we perhaps might imagine. I think it's reasonable and it's actually necessary. So I don't know if there are questions that we have. I try to put in all the whereas I could think of. So there's lots of whereases there. But the main thing is we need better statistics, we need better monitoring, and we need to get rid of the non-medical exemptions. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what this resolution is about.
Ron?
Yep. David, I think it's excellent. I think what you wrote here is absolutely great. And I'm happy to make a motion to accept.
And I'll second that motion
Great.
for the same reasons. It's very, very well done, David. Thank you for doing it.
Can I just, this is Linda, can I just point out something about, I think it's the 7th whereas? It seems to combine two very different concepts. It seems like it should be two statements instead of one.
You're right. In fact, I did combine two into one at that point, and I'll separate them right now.
Okay. And immediately above that, David, such as the
Mu in italics.
Got
We're up to the mu variant. I don't know what happened to gamma and lambda, but we're making it to mu, and who knows what's going to happen with mu. I'm not looking forward to that one.
Lois?
I have a couple of questions and concerns. One is we've passed resolutions before. They haven't seemed to go anywhere. They're not listening to us as usual.
Yeah, okay, I'm coming.
So should this be reframed maybe into some kind of a memo, a letter, or a, what's going on. There are other things going that there are other issues here. For example, at Norwalk, and I'm assuming this is happening everywhere, people who have medical exemptions are not being required to be tested, which is totally absurd. We don't, when you talk about having proper software and so forth to follow up on this, number one, at the community colleges, neither students nor faculty nor staff are required to give any proof of whether or not they've been vaccinated. They just fill out, they check off a box in a form that says they've either been vaccinated or not, and that's it, done with it. We're not asking for any proof whatsoever. There are, the numbers issue may have just changed because there is a better report now that supposedly has it. I just ran it and I haven't looked at it, so I don't know what it says. So I've been told, I was told the other day that it was really a good thing that we weren't seeing people go off to get tested. And I questioned why that was a really good thing. And I was told it was a really good thing because we're not supposed to know who is vaccinated and who isn't. And if we saw people walking into a room to get tested, then we would know that they weren't vaccinated. So it's a good thing that we're not seeing them. And I said, well, unless we have an underground railroad or they're wearing cloaking material that makes them invisible, there would be no way that we wouldn't see them. And the fact that we're not seeing anybody walking into a room to get tested is very concerning. I have been asking now for weeks, what is there a penalty, if anything, for not getting tested if you're supposed to be tested? And I'm getting no response because nobody seems to know. So there's all kinds of things beyond what's in that resolution that are problematic. And I'm not sure passing another resolution does much of anything if we haven't been listened to before. I'm more willing to get confrontational at this point. You all know that the people at system office are still teleworking. They're still being allowed to telework. You all now know that, right? And we're not. We're being told we have to be here. And we're being told that we have to have office hours on campus, whether or not we're teaching on campus or not. And they can be virtual, but we have to be here. And some people in some colleges are being told that if they're teaching online, they have to do it from the college. So this is all, I mean, the hypocrisy that's going on here is absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And we're letting them get away with it. So I do have concerns about just passing another resolution because we've just passed resolutions and they haven't listened.
I appreciate what Lois is saying. I think I would separate the issues, though. I still think we can send this as a resolution and maybe address those other issues of the hypocrisy with something that's more like a memo, where, because in a way, those are bigger issues than this. And I think that, we might, I would want to be more confrontational about those things than this. That's just, I think it's worth doing a second communication with the office, with the system office about the things that Lois has designated. So that's just my 2 cents.
Sure. I see Hannah and Carmen. Hannah, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to know if anyone can clarify that. So with the new semester also came a new ID. So we now have to swipe in and swipe out. Does anyone know whether that is being used to check if faculty actually do come on ground? Because we were told some faculty members are, I think, meeting with students outside because they don't feel comfortable. Have you heard anything about that? Does the administration check back whether faculty actually do come on campus to fulfill those office hours?
No, that has nothing to do with this, Hannah.
Who knows?
It's just a tracking tool that they're using, that they should have been using years ago.
And it should be useful for contact tracing also, in theory. Do we know if they're using that?
I don't think that, no, that's not my understanding.
They
It's only
wanted,
to determine who's in the building at a particular time. So in case somebody comes in and tries to kill us all, they can figure it out.
and I think they wanted
Carmen?
to connect it to the vaccine, but I'm just wondering if they're
No,
using
they are
it
not
also
connecting it to
enforce
the
this.
vaccine, Hannah. They are not connecting it to the
I
vaccine.
know they wanted to, no, but I'm asking, are they now also checking on faculty to see if they actually adhere to the policy?
I don't think that we would know that. So Carmen and then David. Carmen? Put your hand up.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry if I put that up.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I wanted to, because I think Lois, had a concern about just one more resolution. But the one thing about it is that I feel like it allows us to kind of have something formal so that I can, as a faculty advisory council committee member, I send this to the whole college. And so this is one way to formally let people know what's going on in the FAC to, some extent. And I think this is something important. And when I send this out, I can say this is a resolution from the FAC, and the last one we sent out, everybody, a lot of people, I got a lot of response from that. So if anything, it's just a way to kind of inform our colleges of some of the things that are going on. So that's all I want to say.
Great, thanks. David Stoloff?
Thank you. We should probably vote on this resolution, but can we come back? I want to respond to what Lois said about getting the word out. So I just wanted to, while it's fresh in response to Lois. So I move the question then. How's that?
Sounds good. I mean, so the motion is there. Oh, I'm echoing somewhere. If you're not muted, please. So the motion is there, and what I wasn't clear on was whether we wanted to modify it. I think that was an idea that Blitz had to include the things that Lois is talking about. But the other suggestion was to create another document, right? According to Mike Shea, that kind of deals with the kinds of things that Lois is saying. So that sounds good to me. Let's keep this intact. And then in addition, we could also consider, I shared with you Gateway's resolution on the office hours thing. We could take a look at that and see if that speaks to some of those issues and whether that's something we want to endorse as we're talking about further issues. So Carmen, your hand's not up again, right? And Stoloff the same? I think I see Mary Beth. Sorry, it's really hard to see hands while the screen is being shared.
But I want to come back later.
Yep, of course. Mary Beth, go ahead.
I was just going to add, maybe the only amendment we might want to make is in that statement about having software is maybe add something in about actually collecting verification, which I think they are technically doing at the universities, but not even attempting to do at the community colleges. So maybe that would maybe be just a suggested amendment. But I agree with all the rest of the stuff kind of being a separate document, but maybe that change.
Okay, is David around to accept?
Colina,
Yes.
I just want to bring up a point. When David called the question,
Yeah. Did he call a question?
Yes, I think he did.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I did. I
We
called
need
the
to vote
question.
on
Oh, Stoloff,
whether
gotcha.
to call the question or not.
My apologies. Let's let's vote, and then let's discuss what we want to add in a different document after that. My apologies still if I wasn't paying attention.
That's okay.
All right, so all in favor of adopting this resolution as is?
Aye.
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 I see that thumbs up. I see the chat. Okay, great. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, great. So that saves us from having to do roll call. Unanimously approved. All right. There is on the agenda, so we're going to come back. David, do you want to talk about this now, or like on the agenda we have, you know, return to campus? Do you want to talk about it then in the more general conversation? You're muted.
Just a half a minute. The,
Go ahead.
you know that the CSU AUP is under negotiation with a contract negotiation. There was a report issued that the negotiators were sexist, in a short word, we could say. And there was something filed against him. There was a report issued by the system office. And that report became public, and one of the faculty members at Easton wrote a Connecticut Mirror article on that report, and also tying it to the governor. I don't know if you saw that. That's caused a lot of problems for the CSU AUP because they no longer want to negotiate our contract after our negotiation. And but I think in response to Lois, I think it got their attention, and I think we have to do more of that. And I know people have written for the CT Mirror, but I think regular comments in the CT Mirror does get political attention in the state. That's the point of what I was saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Blitz, are you there? I wonder if he's still, I think he may have stepped away. I am not clear. Let me know if I missed something. I am not clear whether the resolution on online supplements was shared with us. So I am going to, oh geez, what did I do? Hold on, I just lost you all. I'm back. So let's just skip over that, and if Blitz returns, we'll find out whether or not he did produce something for that. Yes.
Kalina, I'm sorry, I just had one quick question. I blanked out for a second. Did we switch the whereases that Linda suggested in that document?
Yes, it was modified
Okay, thanks.
on the screen, I believe. Is that correct?
I can't read the screen, it's so small. So I just couldn't remember. I just think we should make that change, even though we voted on it, whether, that's all. Thanks, sorry.
It was just a sort of grammatical thing. So yes, it has been changed. Okay, so let's skip over that and just talk about return to campus. If it turns out that Blitz has something for us on the supplements, then we can always just add it to that. Is there more discussion that we need to have about return to campus? And this is a good time, I think, to make a list of the issues that Lois was raising that we could prepare for a resolution. And I honestly do not think that we need to scramble to wordsmith this in this meeting, simply because, as you were saying, Lois, the likelihood of anything changing immediately because of this is low, but we need to get it on record, and we need to discuss it, and we need to discuss it further with our colleges. So that said, let's discuss return to campus issues. I will attempt to stop sharing Blitz's screen and share with you the Gateways resolution. there nothing else?
Kalina, while we're waiting for the gateway resolution, I just have a question for others in terms of the condition of the facilities. When faculty arrived, one of our buildings at Naugatuck Valley is very, very old. And it's always had problems with pipes having condensation form on them and then dripping through ceiling tiles onto people's desks, onto people's property, onto people's computers, and also creating mold in the tiles. And while we were gone, that problem appears to have gotten worse. And there's a lot of damage in some offices and mold in the tiles. And right now we're dealing with issues, and the unions are dealing with issues of people being forced to work in offices that are, filled with mold and damp and wet rugs from this condensation issue. And we've been told to just wait once the air conditioning goes off and the heat goes on, that the problem will clear up. But I'm just wondering if others have had issues with their facilities, and it goes beyond COVID, because I think one of the reasons people are really concerned too is because mold is something that causes respiratory distress for many people, and if people are already concerned about COVID, and then they have a respiratory issue piled on top of that, with mold growing in our ceilings. I actually had a chair in my office that was covered in mold, and so it's a really serious issue that it seems to be poo-pooed a little bit, and I'm not sure why at our institution. They are taking the tiles down and replacing the tiles, with new tiles, but that doesn't really stop the problem of pipes leaking into our offices.
Wow. So sorry, I wasn't seeing the hands. So it's Mike and Stoloff and Mary Beth.
I just want to say, Ron, one quick way to fix that is to either threaten to call OSHA or call OSHA. You'll be amazed how quickly administration tries to fix that.
Actually, that's a good comment, Mike. Actually, Connecticut OSHA was called in. Connecticut OSHA has been called in. They are going to come, but we are concerned that they are quickly going through and replacing all the tiles. So I'm not sure how much investigation OSHA does in terms of looking behind the superficial.
Well, a second request can always be put in. It really makes a difference. It's happened at Southern, not so much recently, but long in the past, several times.
Yep.
So anyway,
thank you.
An idea.
Oh, I was chatting away and muted. I'm sorry. So, Stoloff, is your hand down now?
Hands down, but Terry is the guy we just met, right? His name said William Brown,
Yes.
but he's known as Terry. I just wanted to
Terry.
confirm that. My hand is down.
Sure.
Thank you.
And Mary Beth, your hand is down also, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the gateway resolution. I shared it with you all ahead of time. I don't know how many of you got to read it. I can read through it really quickly. If you'd like, why not? Whereas the August 26th questions, for Terry Brown, stated faculty may meet with students virtually, but they're expected to hold their office hours on campus unless they have an approved exemption. Whereas the first definitive statement on office hours ruling was provided the day after classes started, after syllabi were posted, after Blackboard shelves were open, and after students had already started booking appointments for office hours scheduled at various hours, without the expectation the faculty would need to be sitting at the college to hold creative, accessible virtual office hours. Whereas the on-ground office hours policy is yet another example of a top-down, one-size-fits-all management philosophy at CFC, which prioritizes decision-making at a level far removed from students and their actual needs, and dismisses faculty expertise and professional judgment as inconsequential. Whereas the administration's failure to value faculty and consult with faculty resulted in a ruling made in ignorance of what faculty have learned and implemented over the past 18 months regarding the utility to students of virtual office hours held at non-traditional times. Whereas the administration did not bother to learn that faculty have offered late evening hours and weekend hours and on-the-spot hours because office hours are no longer scheduled around the on-ground classes. Whereas the administration did not bother to learn that faculty have set up large home offices with cameras that allow for the physical demonstration of course content, which cannot be achieved in a small office. Whereas the administration did not bother to learn that far fewer appointments were missed or canceled as a result of the creative, accessible virtual hours offered by faculty, and that vastly more students took advantage of office hours because they no longer had to fit office hours in around their on-ground classes or make a special trip to the college for office hours. Whereas the administration did not bother to work with faculty to come up with creative solutions that would best serve students, such as requiring on-campus hours for faculty holding office hours during the business day, but allowing those faculty to hold evening and weekend hours to do so remotely. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Faculty Staff Council at Gateway Community College urges the administration at the regional college and system level to revise its office hours policy in consultation with faculty in order to actually serve students where and when they are available, and urges the administration at the college regional and system level to reflect on the damage to students' culture and morale that is caused by a top-down authoritarian dismissive approach to managing dedicated professionals to whom the common goal of students should be shared. Okay, I have read it. So that's, hey, hello, we have new folks in. So that's the Gateway resolution. It is fairly specific to the Gateway situation, but I think that the resolves speak to us all. No? Yeah. So we can use that as sort of background for what we might produce later. We may choose to simply in some way endorse this. I will leave it up to you what we want to do here and what else we want to raise. And it looks like we have some union presidents in the House, so we can get started discussing with them in just a few minutes. So what are your thoughts on this? I see you, Lois. Go ahead.
I have a concern because that specifically addresses office hours and office hours only. I am, speaking of what David Stoloff said about writing things, I am actually in the process of writing something. And part of it is chronicling all of the issues. All exemptions, both medical and non-medical, will be approved. All the community college students do not need to submit proof of vaccination. Faculty and staff do not need to submit proof of vaccination. Those who ask for non-medical exemptions will need to be tested weekly. Those with medical exemptions will not have to be tested. It appears if you have a medical exemption, you magically can neither get COVID nor can you transmit it. We do not know what, if any, penalty will be applied to any student, faculty, or staff member who does not get tested. Add to the above the fact that many students are not even aware that this ill-thought-out process exists. Student access to accurate information is non-existent on the internet or social media. I've checked, by the way, both Facebook and Instagram for Norwalk, and there's not a single mention on either one of them of the fact that we're actually in a pandemic. And emails have seen limited success. Only our non-credit students know even less because most of them are not aware that they even have an email address. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that these are the issues that they're continuous. And these are my concerns.
All right, so you've listed some great ones, right? Shall we continue making a list, put something together for next meeting? Does that sound good, Lois?
Next month is by mid-October, we should all be dead as far as I'm concerned.
I wonder if we couldn't, I'm sorry, I just got back.
Yeah.
Like 3 workmen show up in the house with, anyways, it was chaos here for a few minutes. But I agree that I think we should just make a list of these things now, if these are problems systemic at the community colleges, right? And so what were the issues that you had, Lois? I'm going to write them down and I'll put them on display.
Well,
All exemptions, both medical and non-medical, will be approved at the community colleges. Students do not need to submit proof of
Hang on.
vaccination. I can send you this, whatever.
Well, no. At community colleges, go on.
Lois?
Do not need to submit proof of vaccination.
Um,
Go ahead, Mike.
Colleen, I just want to say, I think we should endorse the gateway thing. So
Okay.
that, because that's immediate, and work on the list that Lois is compiling. Because if the presidents are here, we might want to work on the
Lois,
list.
send me your list on in chat, and I'll write it up now.
But I would move that we endorse the in case anybody wants to second it, I move that we endorse the gateway statement.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and abstentions? Okay, once again, unanimously approved. Okay, so we have endorsed that. We are compiling a list in the chat that we may return to. And let's move on to chatting with, I see Greg is here from Swove, and I saw Seth. Where's Seth? Seth is here. Is Patty here? I'm not sure. And I had this item sort of under the guise of the September 11th action that is being planned, right, by pretty much all the higher ed unions in the state, and thought that it would be just a good forum here to have a little conversation with our union presidents to sort of discuss the issues that are of most concern, right? The issues that might get us out there to really advocate for greater funding, greater oversight, and all the other things. So if I can I just kick it to the two of you to just chat with us for a minute or two, Seth and Greg, and then we can chat, we can have questions and so on.
Sure.
Greg, you want to go first?
Good, Seth.
Certainly. Thank you, Greg. I wish some of our other peers were here, Patty and Dennis and Larry, but I'm sure we're all super busy. But well, absolutely great to be with the FAC again as always. I think Kalina mentioned this event that's coming up on September 29th, the higher ed action at Gateway, where we're going to be rallying for our contracts, rallying for our students, and rallying for our colleges and universities to be better funded by the state, and really calling out and challenging the state of Connecticut, challenging Governor Lamont personally by some of his failures to oversee adequate funding in our system, and calling out the legislature for them to really do a better job with their oversight of this kind of unaccountable and off the rails Board of Regents. What's most pressing, and then Greg and I can go back and forth. What's most pressing is our contract negotiations. I'm aware of the disastrous proposals that have been proposed for AUP, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the equally horrific proposals that have been sent to the community colleges. And it's nothing short of an insult to all of us, given how hard we've worked over this pandemic and over the many years. And I think resoundingly, we're seeing many more of our colleagues standing up and saying, we're not going to allow our contract to be attacked, and we're not going to allow our higher education system to be, to be really weakened in the ways that is being proposed by the Board of Regents. And it's just insulting that the board continues to use words like equity and student-centered and other euphemisms, when what they're really talking about is managerial control, managerial discretion, and a centralization of power. So, the fight is staring us in the face. And fortunately, I think more and more of our colleagues around the state are really standing up and saying enough is enough. And, I know AUP has been doing this for months. You guys have been in your contract negotiations for a long time, way longer than us. And Greg, your folks as well. So, it's a simple message for our members. I think, it's time to stand up really clearly and demand the administration get serious about contract negotiations. Right, we're here to get a new contract that benefits our students, but we're not going to go back 20 years and lose hard-earned provisions that we've had for decades. So, so that's why we have to stand up. So the event on the 29th is important, and many other events that we're going to have throughout this semester are important. So we basically that the administration is not going to go down, as they think it is.
I guess I can take over at this point for a few minutes. It's interesting. First, I want to say thanks to Marina Garcia Bowen. This is my first time actually being part of FAC, and I've been around for almost 25 years. Maybe not quite as long as Mike Shea, but I've been around a while. So thanks for allowing me to be a part of it. Marina, thanks for the work you're doing. It's interesting because just recently, Marina, I think, is coming to the end of her term and has spoken, about trying to identify someone else that has passion to serve on this, because it's, extremely important for our system and for us from SWOF to have representation. So we're looking at the state statute, because there's a statute that determines, or maybe it's a board resolution that determines how we define from the SWOF perspective or from the administrative perspective who sits on it. So, to be determined, but I certainly want to say thanks to Myrna for her work. As I sit remotely in my son, I have a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old. I sit in my son's desk, and this is the first time I'm at his desk. I've been moved throughout my house because of water damage, but I work at Southern Connecticut State University. And I sit here, and I just, 45 minutes ago, first time I sat down, and he's a 15-year-old boy. And what book do I see is Animal Farm, right? And so, like, it's been some time since I've thought about Animal Farm, and it just says, all the animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. A farm is taken over by its overworked, mistreated animals with flaming idealism and stirring slogans. They sent out to create a paradise of progress, justice, and equality. Like, how appropriate is it that I'm sitting here talking to all my faculty colleagues, and this book is here. It's just crazy. I can't wait to exchange dialogue with my son, and probably maybe I'll read it again. Might need Mike Shea's input on that one a little bit, but so yeah, we've had some challenging times. There's no doubt. SWOF has been a little bit more silent. It's just a strategy that we've had. I'll start with our contract negotiations. Easily maybe as demoralizing for my colleagues as they've ever been. They redlined the entire contract. There's no aspect of the contract they didn't remove. Same thing that you guys may have heard. They came at us at 4 years of zero. They wanted our wages from 2019, our last wage increase, 12 furlough days. Nothing they didn't provide anyone else. They came at us and redlined the entire contract. If they could, well, they did. They tried to stop collecting dues as well. That was one of the initial proposals, and we were like, oh my God. So early on, to the credit of Jody BOR, we're part of AFSCME, and Jody was able to get me on the phone with the governor early on. Not anymore. That was, I think, when CBAC still had some decent relationships with him, and was able to take some of those components off the table. But if it was up to them, we would have no union, no e-board, no one collecting dues, and they would dictate what happens when it happens, and good luck. Fortunately, we're able to stand up, and we have a lot of colleagues that I'll say connect with the legislators, and that really, I say, it does become the game changer. So for those of you that don't know what I do, I get release time to be the president of the local. we have about 820 members. The system office, including, which interesting enough, around about the 80 members we have at the system office, they support a lot of the community college work, less at the campus level. But yeah, out of those, the rest are all on site at the campuses. So the negotiations have been extremely challenging. Their chief negotiator is Fred Craddy from Western. If anyone knows Fred, he's a really good guy. So we're in a better position, I think, because of that. At least we didn't have to walk in the steps of AUP, and good, bad, or indifferent. It's pretty evident that the way in which the board has addressed AUP just in these meetings is confrontational. The strategy up front is really, I said to Jody Barr, and I actually said to Dan Livingston, I'd like to just have a conversation with the governor not to badger him, but how do we get to this? So yes, we had Marco Jakian, right? Politician, not an academic, knew nothing about any aspect of higher ed other than what his next pension was going to be. And he, if he only engaged faculty, I'll even say faculty, not even staff, because I think our staff we fall in line with you guys. We're most of the time, I think we think just like you guys do. If we only engage, we might be somewhere where they want to be. They just haven't progressively thought outside the box and said, hey guys, we had this fiscal crisis, we have this enrollment crisis. Can we move forward come up with 10 variables? But they're not getting there. So without getting too far off track, our negotiations have been challenging. We're meeting again. We have had, our negotiation team has probably met maybe 8-9 times. Andy Kripp is on the call. There's representation from each campus. I want to feel that we're optimistic because it's Fred. So we don't get what we read in table talks with the AUP. Although I do think that it's pretty evident that that's changed a little bit. So that's the negotiations part. But I will tell you before, I open up to questions, and the answer is the vaccinations were extremely stressful for our members, for our colleagues, and telework. Telework right now is I'll say tenfold of what contract negotiations is for me. I mean, there isn't an hour, or not an hour. There's a day that's going to go by where I'm not getting, 3 to 9 emails. For those that were unaware, last contract negotiation, 2017, we were the only bargaining unit in the state of Connecticut that, other than Charter Oak, that were able to get the word telework, an article in the contract. We have it in the contract. We can telework. Well, unfortunately, management, based from campus to campus, decided that everyone's coming back. Sorry, you're all coming back. 2 campuses did it sooner than others. System office, actually, the system office wanted all their people to telework, which is interesting, right from the get-go, because they are receptive to telework. And now we've had, I'm going to just an arbitrary number. It was Labor Day that everyone had to get their applications in, but it's on a rolling basis. We probably have about 100 people that applied, I think. Those are the numbers we're roughly getting. And even if we only get 50 or 60 people, the other 40 are unhappy. So the same things you guys are dealing with office hours and classrooms and those, the students aren't coming in the buildings, right? We know that. Unfortunately, right now, we just started where we're finally having our colleagues that are in registrar, bursar, IT, wherever they are, we're going to have them try and compile some data, just week to week on how many students are coming in, how many are coming in the building. And it's less than it has been. Of course, we all want enrollment, right? That's a no-brainer. But so telework is a big bone of contention. With that, I'll be quiet and see what questions you guys have for me.
Thanks. Lois?
Greg, let me just ask you about what's happening at System Office with telework. My understanding, and I was sent some documentation, but there doesn't look like there's an end date. And they can telework They can just telework, right? Am I understanding that right?
Well, Lois, that's good news. I've seen only John Durman, who's our president and runs that campus. We communicate daily, but the way the contract reads, our Article 16 only. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The way our contract reads, Article 16, the way it was written was it was only for 90 days. So we're hoping, of course, it's in perpetuity or, on a rotating semester base or for a year. Right now, I think the way the application was written, it was supposed to be for 90 days. But if they're coming back beyond that, that's great.
Well, my understanding was from the rest of the state was something like October 2nd was the cutoff date for telework, but I didn't see any end date in the documentation that I got from System Office about their options to telework.
We all know that, right? CBAC had an entirely different arrangement that didn't impact us in higher ed, UConn, or us on the BOR side, which that extends through December 31st of this year. And again, I think Danny Livingston, Seth, you'll have to correct me on this. I think Livingston said this week, maybe a little bit more than half of all state employees are teleworking. The rest, agency to agency, they're not necessarily allowing it. Kind of like on some of the campuses, clerical aren't allowed, right? Although they do fall under CBAC because they negotiate with the Office of Labor Relations, where we negotiate directly with the Board of Regents. I don't think I answered your question though, did I?
Yeah, so I'm specifically asking about 61 Woodland Street
Yeah.
and their ability to telework and if there's an end date to that or not.
First of all, everyone that applied for telework at the system office was approved.
I understood.
Yep.
I just want to know if there's an end date to that.
I'll get back to you on that.
In the documentation I've seen, there is no end date.
That's great news for us because in our contract, right, it says 90 days and we're like, what good's 90 days? It's too quick. So I'll confirm that though, but thanks for giving me that heads up, Lois. That's a good one.
Okay, because what I'm getting at is in the meantime, we're being told we have to come back and we have to be at the colleges and for specific things and what we can't get any, we don't have an option to telework, but this is just gross hypocrisy because they're all teleworking.
Yeah, go up to 61 Woodland Street and see who's there.
So I had pictures of the parking lot sent to me yesterday, totally empty.
Some workers are more equal than others.
Stella?
Seth, this morning we were at the Equity Talk, Equity Walk session, and it was interesting. You put a very insightful comment in there, and then right afterwards they closed the chat. I wonder if you have any reaction to that. Tell us that story.
Sure, David. Well, let me give whomever was administrating credit. They did reopen it after they closed it once, but then they kept it open the rest of the time. So let's give them some credit. But we were having a discussion today in the I'm not sure. I guess one of the I think Forrest Helvey, for the director of professional development, I believe, was leading it. And the discussion was, I guess, equity principles for the Connecticut State Community College, and we had some good dialogue and discussions. I was kind of pointing out some of the hypocrisy in some of the statements that are being proposed, and just how it's kind of convenient and really insulting for how the system wants to just kind of announce this college and talk about how equitable it's going to be after they've ignored the faculty and staff for 4 years across the system, basically ignored their employees for over 4 years, and completely disregarded us every time we've asked for true shared governance or every time we've asked to have real input into the process. So, so they have these kind of flowery statements about equity, which are nice and look great on paper. But if you go to any one of our colleges and ask individuals what it really means, people explain it means absolutely nothing, right? Because we're not part of the process, and we've kind of been silent throughout the process. Not to mention there are serious structures in the one college that are simply anti-equity and not equitable in any strength and in any sense. So Yeah, I think I put a comment to that effect in the chat, David, and then it was kind of the chat was magically disabled, but then they reopened it, so I'll give someone credit for keeping the dialogue open toward the end. But it was a good opportunity to have this discussion, which I know the FAC always has with management, and we're fighting for equitable structures in the one college, right? There are things that they're proposing to community colleges, like the removing faculty and department chairs, the way that they have this new I teach ridiculous policy, so many other things, loss of faculty control of the curriculum that we simply feel they would rightly never entertain doing to our university faculty peers. But so we refuse to allow ourselves to be treated as second-class faculty in the community college system. And we're going to remind the Board of Regents that at every opportunity, so that they stop using these hollow words like equity in our presence.
Mike, is that a hand? Maybe not.
Sorry, it's a mistake. It's from earlier. I apologize.
Sure. Oh, anyway, thank you for that, Seth. That was refreshing. But and
Elena,
describing the situation. Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
make one more statement? Because, I think history does matter sometimes. And because Mike Shea's on this call, it's pretty important. Mike, for so many reasons, is instrumental in involvement with not only our students and faculty, but union leadership for years at Southern. And you guys may recall, some of you may recall on the community college side, we had a president at Southern many years ago, Dr. Cheryl Norton, who was our president for some time, and the chancellor of the system came at her pretty hard and actually ended up firing her. And our faculty got around her fairly strong, and were very vocal with the board. Unfortunately, the board meetings aren't in person anymore, and that's the disadvantage, because body language makes a difference. And there was one specific meeting I can remember that faculty and students, there was many students there asking questions why this president was what was occurring. And the long and the short of it, that faculty got a lot of legislators, and I'll say a lot, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 or 5 very vocal ones. And eventually, Chancellor Carter moves on. Whether you liked him or not, he came at the wrong person at the wrong time. But the point of my story here is that, you guys are a really strong group of people, extremely professional, always articulate in what you do, looked at as leaders, and don't forget that. Don't forget that when you call your legislator, if you have your, you have your doctorate, use doctor. If not, it's, professor. People, you guys are still held at an extremely high elevation of this state and beyond. So, when you're in any of your venues, I certainly tell you to articulate that, and don't be afraid to speak to the board. The one thing I have said to Alice Pritchard is that it's fairly it's unfortunate that the on the labor side that we don't get time to spend with the board. The board, they don't know who we are. No idea what I do. What I do day to day. Forget what we have to do at night and on weekends. And they don't have the time to run around and do that. So I'm hoping in the future, once we get through contract negotiations, that they will start meeting with labor. So moral of my story there was, you guys, go back and tell 5 of your friends, because you're powerful. You can write letters to the editors. You guys can, communicate to your legislators. And I know, because of being involved with past Board of Regent members that have been board members before the merger, that are there now. I do know a couple board members that when AUP sent those cards out, I know those cards that were sent, like just inundating AUP. There were board members that were like, I know one specifics. He called me and said, my wife's telling me to get off the board. Like, what's going on here? Like, they're just fed up. So the more you, if they won't listen, you got to continue being vocal. But I'll say thanks on behalf of everybody of what you do, because you guys can be more vocal. You know, our colleagues in admissions, financial aid, IT, you know, they're not able to get out in front. They might call their legislators. I know they will, because they call me and say, "Hey, what do I have to say?" So, all right, I'll be silent.
Thanks, Greg. No, that's great. And actually, I think that's a perfect moment for me to just do this. Because I mean, I think that it has been really powerful to think about the ways that that a coalition of people, right? Like a group of people, faith groups, legislators, whoever it might be, can come together, students, right? Can come together and really conceptualize like these little things, these contract proposals are not happening in isolation. They're happening in the context of like defunding the system and all of these other things that are going on in the background. And it's in everybody's interest to support our system. So, you know, I just want to make sure everybody has seen it. And, you know, that's in coalition with the Recovery for All folks who don't just say that we need to find funding, but also tell you where to find it, which has been really helpful. You know, it's a move in that direction. So that's, I suppose, one way to make a little bit of noise. Ron.
Yeah, Kalina, we just got notice today that our division has a meeting at exactly that date and time. I'm not sure if that's happening elsewhere and whether that's intentional or not. I did send an email to our associate dean asking that the date and time be changed so that it can accommodate the march. And he has not gotten back to me all day, so I'm starting to get concerned because he usually gets right back to you. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a management tactic or not, but I would encourage people, if that is the case, to use sick time or PL time to you know to well, at least PL time anyway.
PL time would be better.
Yeah, probably sick time, probably not a good thing to recommend. PL time to go, which is unfortunate if that's the way they're going to play it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is intentional or not.
You know, thanks for pointing that out.
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
I wanted to just follow up on what on what Greg said and just share that I Fourth Season is kind of taking a page from AUP, and we're having these little mini rallies across the state, right? Where we're having our members do some picketing and make some noise and really challenge our administration to get serious about what's best for our students, not what's best for their perceived bottom line. So I want maybe the FAC just to be aware of the importance of these actions across the state and the importance of our Senate's continuing to just absolutely challenge the administration on these policies or lack of policies, or lack of coherent policies around safety and the other matters we're talking about. So, I always appreciate the work of this body. And I know your recommendations go a long way when it comes back to our Senate's, as we're looking at your resolutions.
Any other questions or Ron, is that a hand again, or is that you taking down your hand? I just got in. Okay, got it. Any other questions or anything? Oh, Myrna. You're muted, Myrna.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Sorry, what did you say? Sorry.
Are you on?
Did you say anything?
Could you hear me?
I heard.
I don't.
Did
there
you
are two
say
people
something
talking.
to me?
I don't know. I don't know who is talking. You're muted, Kalina.
Hannah, I said Myrna. I think that was the confusion.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Gotcha.
So thank you. So after serving all these years on the council here. I just want to say that one of the topics that were discussed today, relative to the work that's done on this committee, is that we are constantly approaching BOR. So there is some tension, as you all are well aware, right? With regard to the advocacy and the comments that we make as it relates to decisions that are made that impact us, the students, and anyone we serve. So when you say, call, I think these events that Kalina is mentioning, it's so important for not just this committee to go out and and represent all of the issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. I think it's really incumbent upon us to bring it back to me. I bring it back to Greg, right? Greg brings it back to the whole 4 CSUs, but all the campuses, I think we have to encourage our colleagues to do some of the work of advocacy, lobbying, and I just feel sometimes that they're looking to us to do all of that versus them also pitching in and going out there and taking some time to lobby. I know Central's been very outspoken, and that's the institution I work with. So if there's a bus, it's going to be a full house with Central going to the Capitol. But I just want to impress upon everyone to go back to your campuses and say, this committee could do but so much. You have to come and represent and be the voice for everyone, just like this council has been doing for some time. And the other thing that I also advocate, and my colleagues will mention, is there's nothing wrong with those articles that have been placed in the newspapers. If you have articles, if you have situations, the newspapers will eat this all up. So if there are colleagues that would like to print some news, so the public could be aware of it, that's also another way of advocacy and trying to bring our point across. I just don't think that enough of that happens. It's always the same people. And so I echo what Greg and Seth said in terms of getting more people involved.
So agree with you, Myrna. And it's like the situation is so dire too, right? I mean, I feel like we're down to the wire. There's so much that's going to be lost that can never come back. And I do think that, I think we've all kind of dealt with legislators to some degree. There's so many really good people who sympathize so much with what we're dealing with. But there's a machinery that they have to deal with. And the fact is that the governor is unsympathetic to a lot of these issues that we are raising. So if they are to be, I mean, there's no way for them to have the ability, right, to respond to these issues unless it becomes urgent, as urgent as it actually is, as visibly urgent as it actually is. So yeah, it's time. So I hope there is sort of broader participation. Greg.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty evident that very few people on the leadership side at the BOR are listening to, I'll say the one college subject, right? Their vision, their direction. So, at some point, it seems apparent that maybe just from where I sit as an outsider to some degree, although I'm not an outsider because it impacts colleagues and what we do, is that there needs to be some form of negotiation, I think. Like, I know they're not opening the door, Seth, but it seems like, and it's not just with Seth, it's with the advisory committees, it's with everybody to be able to say, okay, guys, let's just put the swords down and can we move forward on this? Yeah, we're going to move forward with whatever. I don't care if it's, I'll use an arbitrary number. I don't care if it's 70% of it, but can you at least hear us out on the other 30? Right? You guys, can we just, it's about our students, our faculty are passionate. They spent their whole lives here, not making a ton of money and looking forward to paying things forward. So I don't know. Again, I'm not normally on these things, but you know, if there's a way in which, you know, Seth and you and I need to talk maybe after, if there's a time where you guys are just like, you know, I saw the number, right? They're going to hire 160 some odd advisors or counselors, right? Supposedly they're not going to let many people go, or anyone. You know, I know David Blitz has been in these subjects day in and day out, as many of you are. It's just exhausting. I feel for you guys. I didn't mean to be on this call to say that, but I feel for all of us because it's happening to you first. It's coming at us. We know that. Is it 18 months? Is it 36 months? I just heard today there was a specific area on one of the campuses that the system office is looking to to centralize, but no one used the word centralize. It's called the faculty development. We have them on each campus. I just heard someone brought up a subject that in the student affairs committee this morning that something was spoken of. They're going to get me the information, but so I'll be silent now.
Kalina, the one last comment I wanted to make, if I may, is also trying to move our students. Their voices count and matter. And I heard some great stories this morning in an opening meeting about what faculty mean to our students. I just think that resonated so much. So if you have a connection with a student and they said how grateful they are for all of the service and teaching and learning that goes on our campuses, perhaps you might want to coach the student to write a letter to a legislator or write a letter to the Board of Regents. You know, inundate them with letters. We've got to do something to make them know that this is urgent, we care, and it's not only us. It's not only our voice, it's also the students.
I just want to mention, you know, a student of mine from Gateway who had the courage to talk about her own mental health struggles this week, you know, on camera with the press, and talk about what the lack really means and what the need actually is. And it was so impactful, and really speaks to, you know, when a lot of us say it, it's almost like, oh, we're just, you know, picking at the flaws, but it's not picking at the flaws. It's every single day knowing that there's students who may need things and their lives are at risk and we have nothing to offer every day. And I want to say it's beginning to take a toll on the mental health of faculty and staff also, because there's a helplessness there, and it's sort of a low grade sort of stress that continues. It is difficult. Yeah. I feel like I saw a hand, or did I just see David pop on screen? Oh, go ahead, Seth.
Well, just to follow up on what Greg and Myrna just said. Well, Greg, they're the path forward, right? They're the path forward that we needs to involve dialogue and negotiation. That hasn't happened yet, and you're right. I mean that is the path forward, but this is a difficult. The board is a difficult group to do that with, because I mean the FAC has been trying that for years, and we see where we are. But this has been the body that's been there to have the dialogue in the most student-centered and passionate, objective way with the board, and this body, more than anybody, has been summarily disregarded. I hate to say that, everybody, but I mean, whatever. But as other shared governance bodies, the Capital Community College Senate and the Norfolk Valley Senate and the Norwalk Senate, right? These are the voices that represent the democratically elected bodies that represent the faculty and staff, and they're time and time again discounted. And even worse, there are managers going around the state saying that those bodies, these same democratically elected bodies, the college senates and our unions, don't represent the employees, which is add insult to injury. But the path forward is dialogue, but it has to be a dialogue on terms. It can't be a dialogue on their terms. Their terms are about enrollment crises and how to cut, and be happy with what's left. That's not the dialogue. That's not the framework that we want to have the dialogue. We want to have the dialogue about what's best for our students and find the money. That's what you're responsible for doing. But Myrna, you're right. We got to get our student voices 100% involved, and I think we have some real plans to do that this semester and this year. And we need, and I'll be transparent. We've needed to do that in a better way for years. And so that's where we have to look in the mirror and say, but there's never too late, and we're focusing on that.
Well, thank you both. And Greg, I'm going to take you up on that offer that we could meet up and talk about this and figure out ways forward.
Yep, no problem.
Alrighty.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
all
the
right.
wonderful FAC.
Thank you. All right. We might be doing really well. So we are at old or new business. However, how is that list coming?
I have something here, which is, let me see if I can share it.
Okay. So let's propose that as some new stuff.
Yeah, this can be added into the resolution that's already been approved. I mean, I assume you approved it. I was running back and forth with these guys doing some work in the house and making sure they brought in and took out the right things. That said, I think those are the points that Lois brought up. Stop all especially at the community colleges, stop all exemptions being automatically approved and eliminate non-medical exemptions. Require those students, faculty, and staff who claim to be vaccinated to submit proof. Require exempt persons to be tested at least weekly. Enforce status reporting and testing requirements with restrictive and disciplinary measures. Engage in an information campaign on social media for the vaccination, reporting, and testing of all students.
What about staff? I mean, I just still find it so baffling that our staff is not being afforded the same telework kinds of, I guess we already included that, but it just seems so glaringly inconsistent. And I think a lot of these things that Lois has noted are about the inconsistencies.
Yeah, those are the working condition aspects. This is really dealing specifically with the vaccine mandate. But I do agree that requiring people to have their office hour in their office when we know that the students would be actually happier to do it from some place where they don't have to wear a mask and where they're going to feel safer, or even to have group work done sitting in the class using information technology, which is better used remotely. I mean, those are all problems, along with the remote working for staff. But I think that's covered by the other resolution we passed last time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Can I suggest that you add an all in front of exempt? So require all exempt persons to be tested at least weekly, because Lois had noted that they were only testing non-medical exempt folks.
all exempt.
And I would say for the community colleges, acquire the appropriate software to effectively collect the information.
Yeah, that's in the other resolution, but we can add it here too. It doesn't hurt to repeat. For status report, so this should actually go over here. Sorry.
And Lois, Lois and Ron, I see your hands.
What about adding something about the fact that the actual CDC guidelines for institutions of higher education where not everyone is fully vaccinated are actually 6 feet social distancing, not 3?
Well, we can ask that, but I think we should be asking things that we have actually a chance of getting.
Well, maybe it just should be noted then somewhere that
Yeah, we can actually say respect all CDC standards.
Ron?
The other issue we've had is that, so if someone, we've had instances where staff members have been exposed. They did contract tracing. They've told staff members that they were exposed and they need to get tested and quarantine at home. But they have to take sick time. They're not allowed to telework from home. So they're sitting around at home taking sick time when the college would benefit from them if they're able to. If they're not actually sick until they get their test results, they certainly would benefit from them teleworking. I don't understand why under that circumstance where the college has told them they're not allowed to come into work, the college is also telling them they're not allowed to telework. It makes absolutely no sense.
Can we said somewhere about that there's no rhyme or reason to any of this? They seem to be they are making it up as they go along.
Well, I think that's more a general comment than a
Well,
specific
And
recommendation.
then maybe we should be doing a general, some kind of a general, I don't know, whatever.
I mean, it's a matter of necessity that we're making it up as we go along because the world keeps shifting. But the problem is I don't see any, I don't see what the commitments are, right? It doesn't seem to be like reducing exposure. It doesn't seem to be like, I'm just not sure what the commitments are. The commonalities between all the policies seem to be to just maximize being able to kind of, I don't know, supervise work or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the measures that have been taken by administration were to facilitate return to on-ground classes. Ultimately, A, they think that's better for students and faculty, and B, they realize that that's financially necessary, right? For example, at the universities, in order to fill the residencies, in order to recruit, the students and maintain enrollment. So there are numerous, I think in their thinking, there are numerous issues, one of which is health and safety, others of which are enrollment and budget, others of which are power and control. I think there are really three different things there. But unfortunately, I think in a resolution of this sort, we need to address directly the health and safety aspect of it. The rest of it, I think, it's in our general advocating for faculty and staff that we're addressing especially the third issue, which is power and control. I mean, a lot of students first is about power and control, right? And we need to delineate, where we have control and where they have control. And it's pretty clear that with respect to curriculum and pedagogy and related areas, that is where faculty need to maintain control, because we're the ones with the expertise without which they can't offer the courses and the programs. But I think that's a separate issue. So I just think, I don't know, I've added what I can of what we've discussed. So I've added in acquire necessary software for reporting, respect all CDC standards and recommendations, allow teleworking where consistent with work, including faculty and staff on quarantine. So I wonder if that wouldn't, we can make this part B of the resolution.
Cool. Lois, you have a hand up again.
All right, but I just think that and maybe this is in front of the resolution or something, which something would say that this is, what they've done is they've come up with this incoherent response. And we know and understand that everything is constantly evolving, but it would be relatively easy to adjust if there were a coherent foundation to build upon.
Right.
There isn't any.
Right.
It's totally incoherent.
I agree. It's hard to figure out what we're aiming to achieve.
Well, I think the first and immediate thing is to end and revoke non-medical exemptions. And secondly, to make sure that there is software and pressure for reporting, because those are the two major problems that we face, because we know that the virus mutates amongst non-vaccinated people. The more people we have on campus who are non-medically exempt or who haven't reported and haven't gotten vaccinated as well, the greater the danger is. That is the single most important issue as far as I'm concerned. There are also all the various other things, but I think we've kind of mentioned all of them. I do agree that, a coherent set of principles, right, of health and safety considerations, prefaces all of the various aspects of resolutions that we put forward. But I think that's pretty implicit in everything that we've done so far.
But at the community colleges, if we do away with non-medical exemptions, it's not such a big deal because none of our people, faculty, staff, or students have to prove they've actually been vaccinated. So we do away with the non-medical exemptions and they go back to this form they need to, and then they check off, well, I've been vaccinated. I'm done.
Well, that's the to submit proof part, but you may want to reformulate it. That's the second item.
You know, I'll just mention that I don't know how many other people requested these numbers from their colleges. We've requested it from system office and received nothing recently. And I requested it from the college and noticed that I think one of the things that I really wanted to know, but I haven't received a response, was whether we are separating out those who requested non-medical exemptions because they were not taking on-ground courses and those who requested non-medical exemptions for other reasons. Because I think that's useful. That could really confuse what we're looking at. So it'd be nice to know if those are being sorted, but I don't know that they are. All right, so I understand your desire, Lois. I feel the same thing, but I'm not sure that we know how to express that. And I agree with you, David. I think it's implicit in the fact that we are doing this at all. Are we ready to move on this, or do we need to make additions? Would anyone like to make a motion to add this as an addendum to the resolution we passed earlier in the day on vaccination?
I'll make that motion, Kalina.
Second? Thanks. That was Robin, I think. And all right. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. No roll call necessary. Okay, we are still in old, new business. Is there anything that we need to just throw out there before we go?
Could I just get a clarification, Kalina, on what this roll call thing is all about?
It's the new, is Pam still here? No, she's not. There were modifications to the virtual meeting regulations, I guess, for public meetings. And I think we've been extended through April 2022, and there needs to be there's a little blurb that has to be added to our agenda that just says to contact Pam Helene if you have an issue with entering the meeting, so that everyone has access. And the other thing is that if there is a contentious vote of any sort, that you call a roll call vote so that it's clear who voted what. So that's part of the public meeting regulations at the moment. And I'll have to look at them again. And I saw, Jen's hand is up.
Hi. I was just wondering if it's possible. First, I want to say that I think Lois's minutes are excellent, and I so appreciate them. I have felt for a long time on this committee that there are so many different topics that I think I have a handle on, and then when they're being discussed, I'm not quite sure. But Lois seems to capture everything really clearly and easily. And I was just wondering if we could get the minutes, even if a pared down version, a little earlier than the next meeting. If you get them any earlier, because it would really help me with presenting to my faculty senate and kind of having the little bit more context that I feel her minutes provide, that I don't always feel comfortable asking a question about, but I also don't want to put any strain on her to get them sooner. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if anyone else feels the same way, but it's like, if we all have to take minutes of every single thing so we remember to report back, then I don't know. It just feels like a lot of people are doing multiple duplicate work when we could just benefit from like having a guide. Or and I'm really not trying to be lazy. I literally like can't follow things sometimes because it goes too fast.
No
I'm
pressure,
sorry.
Lois. The other thing that I can say, but it requires sometimes that you're reliving 3 hours of your life, is that our meetings are usually posted on YouTube by the following Monday morning. And I can always get them to you earlier by, I usually share them with others like by Friday evening. So that's helpful also, but go ahead, Lois.
But I've been doing the minutes pretty early, and actually I got them to you guys, I think a week and a half or so ago, and I had actually had them for about a week before I sent them to you. So I can send them as soon as I'm done.
Okay, sounds good. And then I'll
Amazing.
share.
And on the day that I step down from the committee, I will take you to an outdoor restaurant to celebrate your wonderful minutes. Cocktails on me.
Oh, well, then yeah, absolutely. Now I'm bought on that.
That's great. Ron, what did you just say? Do you mind sharing that with everyone? Oh, you're muted, Ron.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute. I kept hitting it twice by accident. But I received a text from my CSET rep who sent me information. I won't get into the details about the information, but she sent me information that the CSET chairs were told that CSET would have no role in creating supports for the college level English. That James Gentile and one other person would be leading those efforts, and they are looking for faculty to serve based on release time. So they've already gone, they've already withdrawn their agreement that was passed by the BOR and appeared on the BOR's website this week, back in May, that says that CSET would have a role. But apparently CSET was too outspoken in terms of its opposition to the dissolving of developmental English to have a role in this. So
Well,
just
do
wanted
you want me to chime in with a little more context too?
Sure, Jen.
I know it
Yes.
was on the agenda, but essentially what happened was James was the chair of CSET for about 20 years, and we kept asking for new leadership to give other people an opportunity, and things got a little tricky towards the end, but ultimately Susan Gentry and Christine Ruggiero took over as co-chairs, and their job on CSET was to represent every campus. And most faculty on most campuses didn't want to participate. And some of the folks who were doing the English ACME work were very vocal and critical about CSET members to the people in charge of guided pathways, et cetera, saying that we're a group that doesn't want to do the work and things like that, and really undermining us. Also, to the extent that people were trying to undermine us publicly by sending emails about us having a political agenda and then copying the guided pathways folks and some union people and not even sending them to the colleagues that they were citing as being problematic. So that all got out of hand and very frustrating. And then ultimately when the CSET chairs who sent their proposal that Mike Bukaris drafted from the PA 1240 Council to push guided pathways down the road, the CSET chairs sent that to the guide pathways counselors managers in the spring. They followed up via email multiple times over the summer and were completely ignored. And then when the CSET chairs met with Fran and Mike Stefanowitz and stuff just recently, they were basically, they felt like they left the meeting feeling like they were like kind of shamed into saying that that English is the problem, that English wouldn't participate, and that James Gentile and Andrew Sottle, I believe, from Manchester, are going to be taking over all of this work because CSET just quote unquote isn't going to do the work, which is a quote that I've heard many, many times from the ACME English folks that did participate, said about us publicly. So there was a whole lot of undermining happening behind the scenes, and it's very unfortunate that things played out this way. But I don't think that, I don't think anyone who knows the CSET group really is taking any of it seriously, but it's just, there's been a power shift. And I heard from, I'm going to be speaking with Mike Bukaris later today, who's the chair of the PA 1240 Council, and it looks like that council is not long for this world either, which is really problematic because that's a legislatively mandated group. And it seems to me like the most frustrating version that you can imagine of things happening behind the scenes, where people who want to be in positions of power are putting themselves there at the expense of the voices from all of the faculty in the system. And I don't know if that's helping or not, but that's kind of a short overview of what happened this summer. But CSET's a lovely group and has done amazing work for the last 25 years, and it's super sad.
Thanks, Jen. That's tough to hear. And I think I forwarded everyone, like there are new changes to ACME now that I guess maybe reflect what you just said, Ron, right? And I guess it's not completely out of nowhere. There was stuff happening over the past few months. We might have to, God forbid, return to that after. It'll be a solid year of ACME if we look at that again.
Well, it's just another example that undercuts, Dr. Brown's promise to listen to faculty, right? We just have, I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that faculty are not listened to.
Well, and Dr. Chang's and Dr. Levinson and Dr. Keats. And
the evidence is overwhelming. So making promises doesn't cut it anymore. We actually have to see evidence that faculty are listened to, because all we keep seeing is the opposite.
Right. And that's not the first group that has been labeled problematic. Oh, Fran.
Yeah, I'm going to speak the obvious, but I've just been pondering. This is a power struggle. It really just boils down to that. The Board of Regents and System Office has no reason to negotiate with us because we have no power. There is no oversight. So absent oversight, this is going to continue. Do we have the power? FAC? Obviously not. Do the college senates? No, obviously not. The power ultimately is political. I think, and maybe through the unions indirectly. And that's, I think, where we need to focus our energies, talking to legislators, working with the unions. And I don't know if that's going to work either, but, the only thing that is going to stop this is power. This is a power struggle. We don't have the power, so we either have to find power or we have to align with power or develop it. It's the only thing that's going to stop this.
Stola?
The article I talked about in the CT Mirror by one of my colleagues tied the human resource officer here to the governor, and tied the governor to Cuomo, and that caused a lot of anger by the BOR, and so our union apologized, not apologized. They said it wasn't our standard; it was the faculty member standard. But the governor must understand there's something rotten in the BOR, and they have to get down to it. Ultimately, the power is the governor's, right? And I'm afraid that we may have to figure out try to find a way to get an alternative governor. But no, and I think we need to find another candidate if we can.
Blitz?
Speaking of, yes, it's a question of power and control, right? And the group that is seeking power, on my view, is the system office, which is the group that is expanding, right? They have as the complicity of the Board of Regents, which is needed in order to certify or approve their actions. And we need to reestablish the appropriate principles upon which higher education, and in particular public higher education, is based, namely that it's to a large extent bottom up, based on faculty control over curriculum and pedagogy. Of course, we know that, but I think we have to continue to spread the word, as it were. The other thing is, I personally am kind of reduced to slogans, right? So, I've heard students first, told to us, if to put it politely, enough times. So I came up with review and revise and repair and rebuild, etc. But if we look at this, there's two things that are happening to besides the power and control issue. One is the growth of the bureaucracy, and I think that we can document, and I think that would have some traction with folks outside. I agree there isn't any real supervision going on. Technically, the governor is limited to the appointment of members of the board, of a certain number of members of the board. Unlike the situation at UConn, where the governor is a member of the board. In fact, the governor is the president, because there's both a president and a chair of the board of UConn. And so I think we need to look at legislative restructuring of Section 185 as it applies to CSCU in particular. The other thing is at the level of ideology. I mentioned that placard I saw that you can't put students first if you put faculty last. But we actually have a different sort of slogan which is implicit in what's going on here, and that's a rewriting of Ronald Reagan's famous claim: the government isn't the solution, government is the problem. And what we see is a view, and that was evident in that PowerPoint, those 11 colored things, right? Where the one-time faculty actually were mentioned by name. It was after advisors. And the view that has developed as the folks at the system office have become, on the one hand, defensive because they're supposed to be doing things and getting things on certain schedules, and those schedules aren't working out. And so they're getting pressed on that, and then they're pressing faculty or trying to circumvent us. But the slogan, I think, which is there is faculty aren't the solution, they're the problem. And if somehow you can get part-time faculty rather than full-time faculty, or advisors rather than faculty, or anything other than these obstreperous people who sit there with their tenure and their complaints. I mean, for many people, our critiques are complaints. And so I think that we have to really also work at that ideological level and try to undermine the assumptions which are being made there.
David, I might have gotten slightly distracted for a second, but were you suggesting that having the governor more closely tied to our administration would be an advantage to us? Or
I was just saying there's a difference between the governor's relationship to the Board of Regents of CSCU and his relationship to the Board of Trustees at UConn. And that is something I think we should look at. I'm not sure that I have a recommendation at this point, but I think it's something we need to look at. We have not had a respect of Section 185. Right? And we've talked enough times about the joint meeting of the BOR and the FAC, and we've talked enough times about having regular monthly reports or meeting reports from the FAC, and for that matter from the SAC, at board meetings. We also have, it's clear in Section 185 that the board has to respect the distinct missions of the colleges and the universities. And that's also not happening, right? Because all the attention has been focused on students first. For example, the review of the presidents at the universities. I don't think that's been done for years. Yet that was that's one of the responsibilities of a board. So I think we need to go back to some of the legislative aspects, some of the ideological aspects, and some of the, I don't want to, spend more time on sloganeering than is necessary, but I've sort of gotten to like, all my little slogans starting with the letter R. What can I say? That's what I've been reduced to, because it is frustrating when there is no third party here. There is no, group to whom you can appeal. I mean, yes, there are the legislators that we're in contact with, and yes, there could be, some folks elsewhere in the executive branch. I think we need to continue that way. It's frustrating, but I'm hoping that there may be some changes. Perhaps I'm just utopian or idealistic in this, but I've noticed at my university, when there is a change in the president, there are some changes in what goes on. And we've already seen 2 changes, at least at the personnel level. that are happening. They may be coincidental, they may be for different reasons. I really don't know. But I think we need to continue on the path that we've decided, and do the best that we can. One last thing, speaking of slogans, and Seth, this might be relevant to him if he's still here. I noticed that something was going to go wrong with the negotiations when a member of the board, out of the blue at a meeting, says, "Here's a new slogan for the negotiation. Everything's on the table." That was inappropriate to discuss negotiations at the board. And secondly, it was bad as a slogan. And then we see the consequences.
Right. Absolutely. And I'll just say, David, the reason I asked is because I don't think that's accidental. I don't think it's not intentional, that there is a closer relationship with UConn than there is with us. And I think we are less forgotten than purposefully ignored or sidelined. I mean, if you look at the way that there's a class system to our public higher education structure, right? There are the community colleges that aren't even respected as colleges. They can just be mushed together. And if you look at the population in terms of, you can look at the level of wealth and in terms of who is eligible for a Pell Grant. You can look at the racial makeup. This is happening right at the moment that the majority of our students are non-white. And this is, I mean, if this were incidental, you'd say, well, you're a little paranoid. But it is a pattern that we see over and over again. So I think it would be naive to say that this is not purposeful. And you see that our community college system is poised to be more at the service of the workforce needs of, the training needs of local corporations than it is poised to serve the humans that live in this state who need to be developed for good, decent lives and wonderful and good jobs and long-lasting careers. Then you have your universities, and we see the makeup there. It's a slightly different, I think I think at the colleges, it's about 60% eligible for Pell Grants, and at the universities, it's like half of that. I might have those numbers wrong, but I do know it's about half of that. And the racial makeup is also quite different. And then if you look at UConn, you've got those out-of-state dollars, and you've got those foreign student dollars. And that is where, right? So who are we serving? Because this is a public, higher education system. Who are we supposed to be serving? And then who are we actually serving? I don't know. But I'm not convinced. I might have been convinced a couple of years ago that should the governor pay closer attention to what's happening here, there would be an immediate turnaround. But I'm not convinced that there's any inclination or any temptation to do anything other than what is actually happening here. Robin?
I just think this is a governor who really doesn't care about systemic racism or systemic inequality at all. He just cares about his very wealthy cohort. And I agree that you can't have equity without funding. I really think this is Connecticut's best chance to address some of the inequality that that so many people say they're upset about. This is the best chance, and it's being systematically dismantled rather than empowered. It just drives me crazy.
Galina, this is Sean. Can I say something?
Sure.
It seems that we're fighting against a narrative that we can't win against their narrative, because as you point out, they have the slogans, they have the student first, right? And the minute we start pushing back against things, they get to say the faculty aren't interested in the students because they're pushing back against us, right? We just saw that today with the CEO that came here, which, I was kind of glad he came and gave the presentation that he gave, because I've always wondered what the hell the CEOs are actually going to do. And if this is his charge, it's really concerning to me what we're spending our money on in this state. But perhaps the narrative that we have is the one that you mentioned, Kalina, and others have mentioned this, it's the inequality in these systems that really should be the focus of perhaps our calls to the legislature and our op-eds and those things. There's not enough light being shined on that, in my opinion, right? And we're living in a time right now when it's all about social justice, right? We're seeing this nationally, and it seems to boggle us because we can't capture that and spin this around and kind of turn it around on them. And hanging a light on that inequality is not a bad thing. It doesn't make us whiners, right? It just makes us like, look at our students. This is how unequal the systems are. And, we heard from the other union reps today and how we all have had a horrible year negotiating. I mean, I'm part of the AAUP negotiating team, and it's been a farce. I mean, we've done our best to put forward some very progressive proposals that I think we were all really proud of. And they've basically just nixed them from the beginning, to the point where just last month when we were meeting with them, they were going all the way back to their initial proposal from December. And they had no problem saying that we're going to defer to what we gave you on 12/1. It's ridiculous. They didn't even participate in negotiations this year. And that just drives home this inequality that we have when we're sitting at the negotiating table with them, or when we're sitting in a meeting with them where they're asking faculty to participate, as happened earlier today with the CEO coming here. And he got some pushback, right? So this inequality exists at every single level in this system. And it's just, we have to grab that narrative, I think. And even though it's not a popular narrative, we got to turn it around on them somehow. Thanks.
Agree. And it is frustrating that the words equity, anti-racism, most recently rigor, have all been redefined for us and appropriated. And it's it's very difficult. Yeah. So I think there are leftover hands. David and Blitz and
Nope, my
John.
hand is down. I said my piece.
Cool.
And all my slogans, I emptied out my complete list of slogans.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like we have an assignment. We have to, right? Like Sean said, we have to figure out how to express this in a way that people really understand what it is we are doing here. There was a Lucy Now Potential actually had a segment. Goodness, I forget what it's called this week. Talking precisely about the sort of standing inequality in higher education. It is a topic now. We have to, I don't know, keep addressing it. Anyway, are we ready to adjourn? Is there anything else that we need to talk about? Oh, yes. Okay, and we should share that, Lois.
Yes.
3 miles on This American Life is one of the best things I've heard. It's also heart-wrenching, but really speaks, I think, to a lot of our experience. Let's share it with the group after the fact. But yeah, anything else?
Can I
Motion to-
need to clear up a couple of things? Who is
Yeah.
calling user 2?
Oh, that's Barbara again. She's in two places.
She's in two places?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Brian Go and Josh Novo.
Brian is, go ahead, Brian.
Hi, I'm the newly elected FAC rep from Middlesex Community College. So this is my I'm a third year teacher, coming into my third year teacher. So this is brand new to me, and again, still in the learning process here.
Thank you, Brian. And Josh Novo was.
I sent him. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Linda.
This is Linda. Josh Noble was a guest from Charter Oak.
Just
I wasn't here at the beginning, so I didn't know if he introduced himself, but he's a new person at Charter Oak, so he was a guest.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Jen, is your hand up for real? I don't think so, Carmen. Jen? Okay. All right. So, are you good, Lois?
Well, we have to define that term.
Let me contextualize
where's
it.
the
Are you
cat?
good for the minutes?
I'm good in this context. How about that?
Great.
And where is the cat? We have not seen the cat.
Because I'm at the college.
Oh, okay.
Work. Yeah.
All right. Well, I move that we adjourn.
And we don't need a second, so we're free.
Thank you, everyone.
See you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.